My name is Jim, and we're going to be talking about this M12 Bandfile today on
Kilimanjaro.
This is the Milwaukee M12 fuel half-inch by 18-inch Bandfile. So that's a big mouthful there. Let's go over what all that stuff means. First off, it's a Bandfile. Now, I'm not sure why they're called Bandfiles, but it's really just a very skinny belt sander. So it's got a little belt, runs around here, sandpaper, you can go sand with it. The half-inch by 18-inch means that it's half-inch wide and 18 inches in circumference around here, so you get about 9 inches worth of reach there. A little bit less because it goes around the pulleys. The fuel means that it's brushless. Most of the power tools these days are brushless. That's kind of gotten to be a bit of a meaningless moniker. And the M12 means that it takes these smaller batteries as opposed to the bigger 18-volt batteries. Now, this is model 2482-20. The -20 means that I got this as just a bare tool version. You can see it's a pretty small box, didn't come with any batteries. They have a couple different kits, and that last digit there, the 0 on the -20, means that this is the bare tool. If there was one battery, it'd be a -21. So if you get the bare tool version, it doesn't really come with a whole lot. You get the tool itself, not the battery. Of course, I had that battery already. You get a flimsy little instruction manual, a couple little interesting things in there that I'll get to later, but doesn't really say a whole lot. And then you get this stupid little Allen key to make some adjustments. This is a complete waste to include this in here. I don't know why they bothered. Not only the plastic is just a waste, but the metal itself. Anybody who buys this tool is going to have a much nicer set of Allen keys. That's going to go straight in the garbage every single time. So kind of stupid that they include that. You also get two of these belts. I've already used up one of them. The other one is on here. They're 80 grit belts. They're no name. They last a reasonable amount of time, but you're going to need to buy a whole bunch more of those anyway, so not a big deal. Getting into the tool itself, starting at the bottom is where you put the batteries in, right? They just slip in, same as any other M12 tool. I will say you pretty much need the bigger batteries, either the 6 amp hour or the 4 amp hour batteries with this. The smaller ones like this one, they don't really put out enough power for this. I'll show you to that in a little bit, but if you only use these, you can bog this down pretty easily. Also with the bigger ones, it's kind of nice that it stands up pretty easily. So going up from there, you've got this nice rubber grip, pretty typical. You've got a switch here with a little safety catch on it, which is hugely irritating, but it does look like you could probably remove that pretty easily if you wanted to. Not that I'm saying you should, but probably could. There's also a button here, so if you pull the trigger down, you can engage that button and it'll keep running, which is very handy, very nice. I do notice that if you're a righty at least, you can't hit that switch with your fingers. I have very large hands, and even with it running, I really can't push that switch down. I wonder if that was done on purpose. It's kind of an interesting design choice. If you're a lefty, you can't even get to that. So this is really kind of a right-handed tool. You can't like push it with your palm. Now you could, do it like that, but not a big deal. So then up at the top here, you have the typical power meter for the batteries right there. That goes on when you pull the trigger. Easy to see how much power is in your batteries. On the side here, you have the control panel for it. Now this is not the greatest choice for this tool, because when you're using it, you typically be using it like that, and you can't see what's going on here. It's not the end of the world, except sometimes if you have it in reverse, you might not want that. It'll go the wrong way, pull you into a part or something like that. Just not great to not know it's in reverse. They seem to have tried to mitigate that some. If it's in reverse, the light that'll shine on what you're working on stays on for like 30 seconds or something after you let go of the trigger if it's in reverse. I think that's why they did that. It's kind of a weird choice. You're never really going to see that light. It's not like something you'll key off of. And honestly, I would rather it have the light on basically all the time when I have it in my hand. So it's kind of an interesting choice. I'm not real sure why they did that. Then we get to the business end of the tool here. So first there's this nice little latch here, and that opens up and lets you swivel this around. And then there's the little door here, and this gets into how to change the belts, which I think they did a really nice job on. So you just unscrew that, the little door falls open, then you push down on that, and this little latch catches, and then the belt is nice and loose, you can change the belt out. When you're done, you just push on that, spring's closed, flip that back up, tighten that, and you're good to go. Super easy. I really like how they did the belt changes on this. I do wish they gave you a little bit more spring travel here. Some of the belts, particularly these Scotch-Brite belts, they're a little bit hard to get on because they seem to be just a little bit too short. Maybe it's this is an actual 3M one, so it's a decent brand, but maybe it is just a little bit smaller in diameter than these other sand belts, but would have been nice if they gave you just a tiny bit more travel on that. Otherwise though, it's a fantastic mechanism, makes it really easy to change the belts. Now on this Bandfile here. On this side here, there's a platen underneath the belt. There's a little piece of flat metal, and that supports the belt as you're working on something. So that'll give you a nice, crisp, flat surface. On the other side, it's unsupported, which generally means you don't want to be using that side because it will wear on the plastic here and everything. However, it does mean that if you're trying to kind of ease the curve of something, you can use that side and kind of ease into the curve. There's not a ton of travel there. It's not like a typical bench-mounted belt sander that could be completely unsupported and you could kind of curve it around there. But I have found that to be a little useful if I'm trying to put like a round on something or not. On the bottom here, there's a little rubber flap, which I thought was kind of silly to start with, but then I started looking at how the sparks were coming off when I was sanding some metal. The vast majority of them hit this little rubber tab here and don't come shooting towards you, which is pretty nice. Of course, if you have it in reverse, then they're going to fly around and hit you in the face, which is why I generally don't want to use this in reverse. This 1/2 inch by 18 inch is a very common size, so they're readily available all over the place. When I first got this, I wanted to get a whole wide array of different grits so that I'd have them in case I needed them, so I got this set off Amazon. It was 40 belts for about 20 bucks. They're not the greatest quality belts, but they seem to work okay. As you can notice, I haven't really used too many of them. Instead, I've been using these Cubitron belts from 3M, which seem to hold up a whole lot better, last a lot longer. They are quite a bit more expensive. These are about $3 a piece. If you're looking for a good source for them, Grainger has them. You can get any kind of grits that you want from them and any sort of quantities. They'll be happy to sell those to you. They also have the 3M Scotch-Brite belts in for these. They call them metal conditioning belts. They come in a variety of different grits. This kind of red color is the medium grit size. I find these super useful for doing light deburring work and just kind of cleaning up the surface of them. I think they're meant that if you have like a spot weld or something, you want to clean up like the heat mark on it or just stuff like that, you can just polish it out and make the surface all look kind of uniform with them. I find it generally super handy, particularly on like an aluminum to be able to deburr the part very easily. So I like these belts quite a bit. They are significantly more expensive. They're about $10 a piece, but they do seem to last quite a long time. So not that big a deal. So what might you want a skinny little belt sander like this for? Well, I found it to be super useful for getting in places where I otherwise can't get into. So say I cut this piece of 1 inch by 1.5 inch steel box tubing here. Leaves a nice burr on the inside. Normally I'd be using my little die grinder here to deburr it on the outside. Works super well, but you can't get inside with that. So instead, you can get this in there, and that reaches in there very easily, no big deal. So I find that to be really handy. I also like it, if you want to clean up the weld seam on some bigger square tube, you can reach in there pretty far and get most of that weld seam out. Now, of course, you can only reach so far with it, but still, you got about 9 inches that you can get in there and get all that weld seam cleaned up. Also handy if you're working, do a bunch of spot welding and kind of bent up sheet metal that's kind of tricky to get in with. You can usually get the tip of this down in there and sand off those spot welds if you need to, or get into tight places to sand off the heads of rivets, stuff like that. I also really like it for just deburring the outside of the part, running it real quick across the end there. Works really well to quickly deburr it, and you can use different grits there, no matter what, to not deburr too much if you don't want to. So it does move quite quickly, at least on the, it's got 2 speeds. So at the fast speed, the belt is moving at 3,500 feet per minute. So you can take off material really quickly with that. You can see I've got a little notch in here. So this is an 80 grit belt, and we'll take that out real easily. So that notch is gone in almost no time. Really takes material off nice and fast. Now you can see I was pressing down pretty hard on these. I found that these Cubitron belts really like to be kind of pushed down on to take a material off very quickly. But that does wear out the belt faster, and it does heat it up a little bit faster too. So when you do that, you do need the larger batteries. So this is the 6 amp hour battery. It is fully charged. So if I switch over to the 4 amp hour battery, if I can get it out. So that still works well, so that doesn't bog down too much at all, even if I'm pressing reasonably hard on that. If I switch to the little 1.5 amp hour batteries though, you'll see that even with fairly light pressure, it bogs down, and actually if I put reasonably heavy pressure on it, I can make it stop altogether. So you really need to get the bigger batteries. I have used these smaller batteries in a pinch, or if you're doing it with on a piece of wood, then they work just fine. But if you're doing it on metal, particularly if you're doing it a fair bit, the 6 amp hour batteries really work the best on this guy. I really like the amount of control that you have on this. You can get in there and you can just use the very tip of it to do some sanding. So if you have something down at the bottom, you can use just the very tip. Right, so you can get in there, you get lots of control, you can get right up to the edges, it's really nice. If you got like a thing cut out here in a piece of wood or something, you can use this to square up the holes pretty easily. Right, so you can notch that out if you want to. It really gives you a lot of different options for getting into tight places. I really like this Bandfile. It's so convenient to have. I can just grab it if I need it. Don't have to worry about messing with the plug. Can reach into really nice tight spots to be able to sand stuff down, weld or whatever that's in there. Get in there really easily because it's completely flat on the sides. You can really get in there and you can get up to the edge real easily. Put a nice sharp inside corner on something, although you do have to be careful because if you bump the belt, this part of the belt onto an opposing surface, you will leave a mark there. So I've put kind of a shield scrap piece of shim stock against this sometimes to make sure I don't do that. But other than that, works really well for all sorts of different tasks. It's super handy. I use it both for woodworking and for metalworking. If I've got something made of wood that I want to just knock the corner off, put a finer belt on this, slow it down. You can easily blend the corner, put a nice chamfer on it or round it over if you kind of work it back and forth. Really handy for all sorts of different things. We'll say it's not all roses though. The first issue with this is the price. It's really expensive for kind of a specialty small tool. Build quality does kind of match that price though. This whole section here is metal, except with the exception of this kind of piece in the center here. And it's all really nicely done. It's nicely thought out on this section here. Being able to flip this lever up, spin it around, that's real nice. Belt changes are super easy, really well thought out with this little catch here to hold it in place while you're changing the belt. Really like that about it. The body is a little bit of a different story though. First off, this trigger here, I really hate the safety switch on there. I don't understand why they felt the need to put one on in the first place. This cutoff tool, which I would argue is quite a bit more dangerous, it doesn't have one, it's just got a trigger on it. And this die grinder here, it has a safety catch, but it's a lot less irritating to use. I find this one not really a big deal. It's kind of automatic to use, whereas this one just is irritating to me, and I find it in the way all the time. The light that's on it is nice, but it's not really bright enough. I wish they would start putting more LEDs on tools like this. They're not that expensive. They don't use any power. You always need more light when you're kind of working in tight spaces. So if they put another LED up here or something like that, really would have liked that. Putting the controls on the side where you can't really see them, I think is a kind of an odd move to make. Really wish they had been on top. This cutoff tool, once again, is a much nicer design in that mechanism. It's got a nice push lever, very easily to see which mode it's in, or positive feedback when you engage it, and you can quickly, easily see, there's a little indicator here of which direction it's in. Like that a lot better. The other thing on this is they've got these vents on here. Now these are the exhaust vents, but the intake is right over here, right where all the sanding dust is coming down. So as you're using this, all the sanding dust falls down this way. That's going pretty quick, but if you're using a finer belt or you're doing wood or something, all that sanding dust gets pushed right into these vents here. I'm worried that that's going to mean this isn't going to last terribly long. I've only had this for about 3 or 4 months, so I don't really know if it's going to be an issue, but if you have had one of these and had it fail, I'm wondering if that would be why. It seems like it's kind of not the greatest design, particularly because there's no screens on this. This cutoff tool has some nice screens on the side here that would protect it a little better than this guy here, although then they clog easily, so it's kind of a double-edged sword there. The last thing I want to talk about is I wish they had made this a little more versatile. This tool, this tool, this tool, and the smaller version of this guy, they're all basically the same thing, right? You've got a stick with a motor mounted transversely on it. All of them kind of look the same here. It spins around. I wish they had just made it so that you take this portion off, put this one on, take this off, put this one on. You have a very nice universal tool. I think that would have made life a lot easier. You could get all of these for hopefully cheaper and have a lot more versatility there. I also think it's interesting that ignoring that, sometimes multifunction tools like that don't actually work any better because they end up having to be bulkier and it's not the greatest thing. But I do question why Milwaukee felt the need to design 3 different power heads here. Like I said, these are all basically the same tool. They all have completely different triggers. This one has a metal paddle, this one has a trigger. Why did they do that? Why didn't they just take one of these designs here and use it for all 3 of them? Particularly this one, I really like the kind of trigger grip on here, and the way that this handhold feels is a lot nicer than this one here. So I kind of question why Milwaukee didn't do that. I'm wondering if it was just these were designed in different places or something like that. Big fan of this tool. Really like that Milwaukee decided to go with the 12-volt version, keep it nice and light and nimble. DeWalt has a similar tool, but they chose to make it an 18-volt version, which I think is a mistake. I think it's a lot bulkier, it's a lot more irritating to use, a lot heavier, all that stuff. If you disagree, if you've got the DeWalt version and you think this one doesn't have enough power, let me know in the comments below, or if you've found some other issues with this, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching.